What happens to a civilization when it trades energy density for weather dependency? What happens when the most electricity intensive era in human history attempts to run primarily on the least energy dense power sources ever developed at scale? Today's the 7th day of March 2026. I'm Justin McShane. Thanks for spending part of your morning with us at geopoliticsunplugged.com. Here's your deep dive for March 7th, 2026. This is not a climate debate. This is not a culture war. This is not about whether solar panels are useful. This is about physics, engineering, and even sovereignty. This is about energy density. It is about whether modern civilization can scale upwards on low flux primaries or whether it compresses under them. Let us begin with something measurable. A single 1 gigawatt nuclear power plant powers roughly 750,000 to 1 million homes with near constant output. It occupies only a few square miles. Its effective site level power density often exceeds 1,000 watts per square meter and frequently approaches or surpasses 2,000 square watts per square meter in real world deployments. Now compare that to wind and solar. Onshore wind delivers approximately 0.5 to 2 watts per square meter when turbine spacing and real-world capacity factors are fully accounted for. Utility-scale solar photovoltaic typically delivers between 5 and 20 watts per square meter, and in many U.S. deployments, it averages closer to 1 to 10 watts per square meter once total land is properly included. This is not a small difference. This is a difference of 2 to 3 orders of magnitude. That gap is not political, it's physical. Modern civilization is not sustained by energy in the abstract. It is sustained by high flux, high density, on-demand energy delivered with extraordinary temporal reliability. Megacities operate because dense electricity enables vertical living. Elevators lift thousands of tons every day in high-rise towers. Electric rail systems move millions. Water is pumped hundreds of meters vertically. Refrigeration systems preserve food and pharmaceuticals across complex supply chains. Hospitals maintain life support systems continuously. Hyperscale data centers consume hundreds of megawatts per campus without interruption. Remove dense, dispatchable baseload, and this entire machine becomes very unstable and destabilizes. It does not gently adapt. It degrades under stress. Now consider demand. Electricity demand is not flattening. It's accelerating structurally. By 2050, approximately 70% of the global population will reside in urban centers. Road transport is electrifying. Space heating and cooling are electrifying. Industrial heat is electrifying. Data centers and artificial intelligence clusters are expanding at exponential rates. Credible projections indicate that electricity demand in advanced economies could double or even triple within a single generation. We're entering an energy-intensive century. An electricity-intensive century cannot be provisioned by low-flux, weather-constrained primaries without compressing capability. Energy systems are governed by capacity factors, dispatchability, grid inertia, frequency stability, voltage control, and reserve margins. nuclear power plants routinely operate at capacity factors above 90%. Utility scale solar in the United States averages roughly 23%. Onshore wind averages roughly 34%. That means to replace one dense gigawatt of nuclear output with wind or solar, one must build several gigawatts of nameplate capacity simply to approximate annual energy production. But nameplate equivalence is not enough. Reliability is determined by worst-case output conditions, not annual averages. This is where the redundancy spiral begins. If wind and solar become backbone of an advanced grid rather than supplements layered on top of dense anchors, the system requires compounding layers of compensation. First, massive overcapacity must be constructed. Installed renewable nameplate capacity must exceed peak demand by multiples to account for variability and low capacity factors. Second, large-scale storage must be deployed to buffer shortfalls. Lithium-ion batteries can address 48 hours of variability economically. Industrial civilization requires resilience against multi-day wind, droughts, and seasonal solar collapse. Third, continent-spanning transmission networks must be built to aggregate diffuse generation and move power across time zones and weather systems. Fourth, dispatchable backup generation must remain available at nearly full system scale to cover extended renewable shortfalls. Fifth, synthetic inertia systems must be deployed to replace the stabilizing rotational mass historically provided by large synchronous generators. Each layer increases capital intensity. Each layer introduces new complexity. Each layer creates new failure modes. The true cost of a renewable-only grid is not captured by isolated, levelized cost of energy calculations. It's embedded in full system architecture required to approximate industrial-grade reliability. Let's examine what breaks first. Megacities break first. High-rise water systems require stable voltage and frequency. Transit systems require continuous power. Refrigeration chains cannot tolerate multi-hour interruptions. Hospitals cannot shift demand. Data centers cannot pause mid-training cycle without catastrophic loss. California has already experienced peak load shredding events during high heat wave and when solar output declines in the evening as demand peaks. Europe's 2022 energy crisis revealed how correlated wind shortfalls and gas constraints create continent-scale stress. These were previews under partial renewable penetration. Under a renewables-only regime, such instability becomes structural rather than exceptional. When instability becomes normalized, urban density begins to erode. This erosion does not occur because citizens prefer sprawl. It occurs because vertical systems designed for baseload abundance cannot function under rationed power. Industries relocate, residents relocate, tax bases shrink, and cities compress. After megacities, continuous process industry is next. Semiconductor fabrication plants require ultra-stable power. Millisecond disruptions destroy wafers worth millions of dollars. Aluminum smelters run continuously electrolytic processes that cannot be paused without severe damage. Fertilizer plants operate high temperature, high pressure chemical reactions that demand uninterrupted power. These industries cannot flex around weather. They migrate toward jurisdictions offering reliable, dispatchable supply. Manufacturing follows reliability, not ideology. Now consider artificial intelligence. Frontier AI training consumes enormous energy. Single training runs for advanced models require tens to hundreds of gigawatt hours. Hyperscale inference operations draw continuous multi-megawatt loads. Robotics, quantum computing research, and defense simulation clusters require uninterrupted power at scale. AI supremacy is fundamentally a power race. Compute follows electrons. Electrons follow baseload. If a jurisdiction cannot guarantee dense, always available power at industrial scale, AI clusters relocate. Innovation concentrates where electricity is abundant and reliable, not where renewable nameplate capacity is largest. Storage does not eliminate this constraint. Short duration batteries smooth intraday variability. They do not bridge week-long wind droughts. They do not compensate for winter solar collapse in northern latitudes. Scaling storage to seasonal levels requires unprecedented mineral throughput. Lithium, cobalt, nickel, copper, graphite, and rare earths. Global refining capacity for these minerals is heavily concentrated in China. A renewables-only grid replaces fuel dependencies with mineral dependence. It does not create autonomy. Hydrogen is often proposed as a long-duration storage solution. However, the round-trip efficiency from electricity to hydrogen and back to electricity typically falls between 20 and 30%. That means 70 to 80% of the original energy is lost. Hydrogen has real industrial applications. It is valuable in ammonia production, steel making, and heavy transport. It is not an economically viable substitute for dense baseload electricity in advanced grids. HVDC transmission is equally misunderstood. High voltage direct current lines efficiently move electricity across long distances. They do not generate electricity. When large regions experience correlated renewable shortfalls, transmission distributes scarcity. It does not eliminate it. Mitigations are not foundations. At the household level, a renewables-only grid stratifies reliability. Wealthier households install rooftop solar, battery systems, standby generators, and microgrids. They insulate themselves from instability. The median household absorbs higher fixed charges and load shredding events. Time of use pricing becomes more aggressive. Appliances default to grid-friendly scheduling. Electricity ceases to be invisible infrastructure and becomes a managed scarcity. Reliability becomes a luxury good. Now examine mining and land use. Wind and solar are material intensive. Achieving deep penetration requires exponential increases in critical mineral extraction. Lithium demand could increase by 20 to 40 times by 2040. Under aggressive decarbonization scenarios, copper demands expands dramatically due to transmission and turbine requirements. Rare earth processing remains concentrated in China. Mining projects require 10 to 20 years to develop. Environmental opposition within Western democracies slows domestic production. The result is structural reliance on foreign-controlled supply chains for materials underpinning the renewables buildout. A renewables-only strategy deepens strategic vulnerability. It does not eliminate it. The strategic consequence becomes predictable. First, routine stability emerges during peak demand. Second, structural electricity prices rise as redundancy costs embed into rate structures. Third, industry migrates towards jurisdictions with dense, dispatchable power. And fourth, AI and frontier compute cluster in those same jurisdictions. Fifth, strategic autonomy erodes. Sixth, inequality widens as reliability becomes privatized. This is not a dystopian speculation. This is a physics-driven progression. The alternative is not fossil fuel maximization. The alternative is density-first diversification. Nuclear provides high-density baseload with compact land use and high capacity factors. Natural gas provides flexible, dispatchable support while longer-term decarbonization pathways mature. Hydroelectric generation anchors where geography allows. Solar and wind contribute volume and reduce marginal fuel burn when layered atop dense anchors. Storage smooths variability rather than attempting to replace baseload. Transmission integrates the system rather than pretending to solve intermittency. This architecture respects thermodynamics. It scales civilization towards the future rather than compressing it. Solar and wind belong in the mix. They do not belong as the sole foundation of advanced civilization. If renewables become the primary anchor, absent dense, dispatchable baseload, modernity recedes measurably. Megacities shrink in functional capacity, manufacturing migrates, compute relocates, costs rise structurally, reliability stratifies, geopolitical leverage shifts towards nations that maintain dense energy infrastructure. The true cost of renewables-only path is not measured in tons of avoided carbon alone. It is measured in lost industrial capacity, lost compute leadership, and lost sovereignty. Physics doesn't negotiate. Energy density remains the non-negotiable foundation of advanced civilization. So here's the strategic question. Are Western economies building grids optimized for long-term sovereignty and industrial dominance? Or are they building grids optimized for short-term political signaling? Which nations are quietly doubling down on density while others chase weather? And when AI manufacturing and strategic leverage concentrate around dense baseload, will we recognize the pattern early enough to adjust? And that's your deep dive for today. You can read the full, long deep dive at geopoliticsunplugged.com. 16,000 plus people read it every morning, and you should too. Look, we do this every morning. Click subscribe to stay in the know. Hit the like button as the video is free. It helps to get the word out. And that's all I ask. So I'll see you tomorrow morning, and cheers.